Welcome into Words with Wallace. I'm your host, Nick Wallace, coming at you. It's Monday, January 26th. What's going on, everybody? Fun podcast today. I'm going to go through, give you my NBA All-Star picks. If I were making the roster for both the Eastern and the Western Conference, the guys I would want to see selected. I mean, what's better than a guy just naming dudes into a microphone, right? I mean, that is peak podcasting, if you ask me. Before we get into my All-Star picks, I do have some other headlines to fly around since it's been little under 2 weeks since the last time I got you guys a podcast. Wemby's balled now. That was a pretty exciting development a couple weeks back. We did get a bummer news out of Golden State that Jimmy Butler did tear his ACL last week. He is going to be done for the season, and frankly, I was going to spend more time on this, but I just kind of feel like they weren't all that close to winning a title even before the injury. I think they were several moves away. And now Jimmy, who's had a fantastic year for the Warriors, honestly probably would have been an all-star selection in the West, or at least in the conversation had he still been healthy. He was really good for Golden State, but after this injury, I just think that their chances of winning this year are shot, despite the way that Steph's playing. And frankly, unless they have a really wild offseason and push all the chips in, I think that's probably it for the Warriors being competitive the next couple years. Maybe I'm being reactionary, but I did want to call out that headline. Also probably had the game of the year. In my opinion, we've had some really fun games over the past couple weeks, but none better than the Spurs-Timberwolves game from like a week and a half ago. I mean, Ant had 50-something in that game. Him and Wemby going bucket for bucket down the stretch. Even though the Spurs got the win, I think it was the best individual performance of the season. I know Jokic had some pretty crazy games, but Ant just looked like a combination of like MJ meets Curry. I mean, it really was ridiculous. He's shooting 41% from three this year. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk more about Ant a little bit, but if I implore anybody who didn't see that game to go check out the highlights right now. A lot of drama coming out of New York. I mean, the Knicks were in quite a slide where they went 2-9 for an 11-game stretch there. Since then, they beat the brakes off the Nets, and then they won a close one in Philly the other day, so maybe they've righted the ship, but the vibes in New York are pretty bad, and that's why the Celtics are sitting pretty comfortably at the 2 seed. We also had mixed reports on Anthony Davis. Now he might actually come back after 6 weeks, so maybe that reopens his trade window a little bit. And that just about does it for the headlines. Of course, I am going to bring you guys Celtics Corner at the end of this podcast after I do my NBA roster picks. So definitely stay tuned for that for any Celtics fans out there, and hope you guys enjoy. So let's get into my NBA All-Star picks. Let's start off in the Eastern Conference. And just as a reminder, we do have the starters announced for both conferences as of like a week ago. I believe the starting lineups are mostly determined based on fan vote, and then the reserves are determined based off of coaches, media, and I think the players even have some votes in there as well. So we're going to be going through my reserve picks of the 7 players in each conference that I think should round out these all-star rosters. But let's start off with the obvious names that have already been announced at the starting lineup. In the Eastern Conference, we have Cade Cunningham, Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Brunson, Jaylen Brown, and Giannis. So all of those were obvious locks to make the all-star team. Just to give you an idea of the guys that we already have in the starting lineup, I mean, Cade's 25, 10, and 6. The Pistons are the second best team in the NBA, the best team in the Eastern Conference. I think he's a potential first-team All-NBA guy. Detroit has a lot of doubters out there, but I don't think anybody doubts the ability of Cade Cunningham. The biggest flaw in the team is people just want to get the guy some help offensively, get another creator. Next, we have Jalen Brunson. He was 28, 6, and 3 this year. Obviously, the Knicks won the NBA Cup, and despite the recent slide where I mentioned again, they went like 2-9 in an 11-game stretch. There is no doubt that Brunson's the best player. He's their guy at the end of close games. Jaylen Brown, you've heard me talk about him all year long in this podcast. He's 30 points a game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. Maxey maybe had the biggest leap of any star player this year. He's up to 30 points a game, 7 assists, 4 rebounds. He's also a really fantastic two-way player. Some of the blocks and the steals that he gets on a night-to-night basis, super impressive. And Philly's way more fun to watch than I ever could have imagined, and Maxey's probably the biggest reason why. And of course, rounding out that starting lineup, we have Giannis. Even though he missed some games and he's out with another calf strain, I should have called that out as well, so that's his second calf strain of the season. He still's played enough games to warrant this starting spot. He's 28, 10, and 6, so his numbers are actually down a little bit compared to what they've been, but I mean, Giannis has been universally considered a top 3 player in the world for like basically the past decade now, so no pushback there with him rounding out the starting lineup. Maybe he's healthy for the game. At this point, I doubt it. So we're not going to get into reserves and all that stuff today on this podcast, but I did want to call out maybe there's a couple extra spots available in each conference. And in the East, Giannis' spot might be up for grabs if he's not able to play in that game. So let's move on to the real exercise where I'm picking the reserves here. And if I did want to pick nits, the first guy that I have as my reserve is Donovan Mitchell. I probably would have had Mitchell in the starting lineup over Jalen Brunson. I mean, if you look at their stats, they're basically identical. He's also 29 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. I think Mitchell's been slightly more efficient, and I think he gives you a little bit more on the defensive end than Brunson. And I know both teams have been relatively disappointing, talking about the Cavs and the Knicks. I think in totality on the season, the Cavs have been even more disappointing, but none of that I lay at the feet of Donovan Mitchell. I think he's been unbelievable. I think he's had better performances. If you want to give it to Brunson because of the NBA Cup, I get it, but Mitchell's my easy choice as first reserve, and I actually would have had him in the starting lineup. So I think there's like a mini tier break after Donovan Mitchell. I think the top 6 in the East are pretty clear. And I did try to put these guys in order, at least in the ways I felt most comfortable putting them on this all-star roster. The second reserve in the Eastern Conference that I have is Jalen Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks are a pretty middling team right now. I think they're clocking in at about the 10 seed in the Eastern Conference at the time of recording. But Jalen Johnson's 23 points a game, 11 rebounds, 8 assists. I mean, he's been their go-to playmaker in the absence of Trae Young. That's probably why the Trae Young deal happened, is they felt comfortable with Jalen Johnson being their primary engine on the offensive end of the court. A lot of Hawks fans and people on Twitter say that Jalen Johnson doesn't really defend anymore since his offensive usage went up. I wouldn't go quite that far. They're definitely still better off with him on the court rather than hiding a guy like Trae Young. But, to say he's not an all-star would be ridiculous. Much deserving as his first all-star selection here. I believe another first-time all-star we have here is Jalen Duren. I do feel like the Pistons are deserving of having 2 all-star players on this roster in the Eastern Conference. Duren's 18 points a game, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, and he also averages a block and a steal. He's probably like the defensive anchor of that Pistons team, and defense is definitely their identity. I think he's even improved a little bit off the dribble with some of his individual creation. I mean, he's not going to get you a bucket at the end of a close game, but if he has a mismatch, he's going to exploit it much more now than he's done in previous years. So I think Duren is much deserving of this spot. And again, we have a couple more guys in the East that I feel really comfortable locking in. I'd say the first 5 reserves are in a nice little spot here. We move on to Karl Anthony Towns, and despite the Knicks slide, I know he actually got some boos the other day at the Garden. Knicks fans are really tired of watching his, clunky offensive game, I guess we'll say, even when he has it going. Like, the drives to the hoop are really awkward. The dumb fouls continue to persist. I mean, he actually fouled out of that win against the Sixers the other day because Joel Embiid just kind of annihilated him. Got him 6 fouls in, I think, less than 19 minutes or something like that. But just because we're disappointed with Cat maybe regressing a little bit across the board, he's still 21 points a game, 11 rebounds, and 3 assists. He's still a plus 3-point shooter, even though he's regressed there as well. I just think we're getting too cute if we're going to leave Cat off the All-Star team, especially considering the Knicks are still a top 3 seed in the conference. Moving on to the last absolute lock that I have in the Eastern Conference here. I have Scotty Barnes, and I've never been a huge Scotty Barnes guy. I know Raptors fans are very chesty online, so I maybe hold that against him a little bit. And he was just asked to do way too much, and the shooting and the jump shot really still isn't there. But he's been taking a lot less jump shots. I just think he's way too overqualified to be your top option on offense, and we've already seen him improve a little bit, in part because Brandon Ingram can kind of be their guy as a shot creator at the end of close games. But Scotty Barnes is still comfortably the Raptors' best player. He's 20 points per game, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. He also averages 1.3 steals and 1.5 blocks a game. He's a fantastic player. The Raptors are actually coming off an awesome win on the road against the Oklahoma City Thunder last night, where he blocked Chet Holmgren toward the end of the game and also came up with an offensive rebound that ended up sealing it for the Raptors. The term winning player gets tossed around a ton, but I really do feel like if Scotty Barnes is able to move on from Toronto, or Toronto is able to bring in some stars, I think he would be the perfect third option offensively, a super, maybe even overqualified Andre Iguodala, and he was quite the player in his prime as well. But I just think Scotty Barnes has been really good this year, and it's nice to see his role reduced a little bit on offense, and he's able to kind of flourish in every other aspect of the game. So I've come around a lot on him. The last 2 spots in the East, again, this is where it gets really interesting. So in my 6 of 7 reserve spots here, this is where I have Paolo Banchero. A lot of podcasts that I listen to don't have Paolo making the All-Star team. I tend to lean with not trying to get too cute, and if somebody was like, hey, gun to your head, who do you think the better players in the conference are? And I still think Paolo is comfortably a top 10 player in the East. I know he's regressed quite a bit. He's dealt with some injuries and whatnot, but he's still played in enough games for me to consider him for this spot. He's still averaging 21 points a game, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. And look, if you want to talk about the jump shooting efficiency, if you want to talk about maybe the shot selection, I get it. I just feel like something's cursed with that Orlando front office, where all the acquisitions that they make that look good on paper don't tend to pan out. I mean, Desmond Bane was supposed to be this knockdown 3-point shooter, one of the best in the league, and I think he's 33 or like 34% on the season, and he's only taking like 5 threes a game. They bring in Tyus Jones, a signing I really like. Turns out he's completely washed now since getting in Orlando. So I don't know, man. Franz is hurt. Suggs is always hurt. It's a tough situation in Orlando, but I don't think there's any doubt that Paolo's the best player on that team. They're still like the 8th seed in the East, and I would expect them to be better than that at season's end. And I just think that we're punishing a player relative to the expectations that we had for him, rather than looking at the production that we've seen so far this season. And so I have Paolo at the 6th spot. Not going to be heartbroken if you have him off your All-Star team, but I think he's still in the mix. And then finally, the last spot in the East. This is where I have Bam Adebayo. Haven't heard a lot of people banging the drum for Bam Adebayo this year. It was a rocky start for him offensively above anything else, but the Heat have been a really consistent team all year long. I think Bam Sneaky has had an awesome offensive stretch recently. I don't have his 10-game splits pulled up, but I know ever since they beat the Thunder a couple weeks ago that he's been really dialed in. He's been shooting threes at a higher clip. Just watching the games, it looks like he's a lot more aggressive, creating his own shot. On the season, Bam's up to 18 points a game, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, a block and a steal. We kind of have that floor built in where we know that Bam is one of the best defensive players in the NBA. The fact that he can guard all positions. I think the reason a lot of people haven't had Bam on their All-Star ballot is because that spot for the Miami Heat is going to Norm Powell, who again, I think he's averaging 23 points a game. He's been super efficient as a scorer like he always is. He's been an instant spark to the new offense that the Heat have been running this year that's really built around driving and kicking. So I understand that if you want to give Powell the nod just for him being a much more efficient scorer and shooter, I do get it, but I don't really think there's any doubt that Bam is the best player on the Heat, especially when you include the defense, especially with you and include the fact that Powell's cooled off a little bit lately, and I think Bam's kind of hitting his stride. So when in doubt, I'm going to give the nod to the guy that I think has been the better player over the longer sample size, so I am going to give it to Bam with that final spot. So now we get into the fun part. We have some honorable mentions here and some guys that were super close to making the cut. The first cut, I guess we'll say, in the Eastern Conference, who might be the favorite to just grab the spot of Giannis, and maybe he makes it over one of these guys anyway, is Michael Porter Jr. I mean, I know the Nets are at the bottom of the standings. I guess they're technically 13th in the conference, but in my opinion, the Nets are still probably the worst team in the NBA, all things considered. Actually, they're probably better than Washington. I'll walk that one back instantaneously. But look, Michael Porter Jr. is 26 points per game. He's shooting the ball at an incredible clip. He's really coming to his own in Brooklyn. He's also averaging 7 rebounds a game. I mean, I really like MPJ, and especially if you're basing it off the Celtics games, which, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about that crazy Celtics-Nets game at the end of this podcast. Michael Porter Jr. has murdered the Celtics this year. He looks unbelievable. I mean, he really just looks like Kevin Durant out there when he plays us. But look, I just have a trouble giving it to a guy that's on a team that's that bad anyways. Just looking at it now, I mean, I have nobody from a team that's a 12 seed or below in either conference, so I didn't really want to break that rule just for Michael Porter Jr. I think he's had an awesome season. I think you can definitely argue him over Paolo or Bam, but I just think we're getting a little bit cute when you include all aspects of the game. When we include Paolo's playmaking, when you include Bam's defensive efforts, I would still give them the nod over MPJ. But if you're here for the shooting and the scoring, I get it. But just because someone is scoring 26 points a game. Similar sentiment with Pascal Siakam, who's quietly had a really awesome year statistically. I think he's up to 24 points per game, 7 rebounds per game. I mean, he's been awesome, but the Pacers have shown no will to win. I mean, they're currently an 11-win team right below the Nets in the standings, so couldn't get there either. A lot of people might yell at me for Evan Mobley not being on the team, and I have Bam. I just want to get this take out there on paper. I think Bam is just a better player than Evan Mobley. The stats are nearly identical. The shooting efficiency kind of leads in favor of Mobley. I feel like I noticed Bam Adebayo's impact on more games. I think he's the best player on the Heat. I can't really reward the Cavs in feeling like they need to get a second All-Star in there. And even though Mobley's been out there, he's been playing, he gives you the usual defense. I feel like a lot of the shortcomings for the team not being where people thought they would be are tied to Mobley not making that leap. Obviously, Norm Powell, honorable mention as well. Joel Embiid quietly averaging 25 points per game. He's actually playing a lot lately. I think he's played less than 30 total games on the season. I mean, he definitely has. So I couldn't give Embiid the nod, but if you're just looking at the past couple weeks, I think Embiid would be on there over Paolo and Bam. So wanted to throw that out there. Other honorable mentions, I mean, Brandon Ingram, if you want to argue him for a spot, I just couldn't give the Raptors 2 spots. And I think if you put Ingram over Scotty Barnes for the Raptors, I think you're crazy. Derek White had a moment, but the shooting splits just haven't been there. And overall, he's still been slumping lately. In total, in the Eastern Conference, the starters are Cade, Maxey, Brunson, Jaylen Brown, and Giannis. And my 7 reserves, in order of comfortability here, we have Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Johnson, Jalen Duren, Karl Anthony Towns, Scotty Barnes, Paolo, and Bam. So let's move on to the Western Conference All-Stars. And just to remind you guys what the starting lineup is looking like, we have Steph, Shea, Luka, Jokic, and Wemby. I mean, that is a ridiculous lineup. I'm not even going to waste the time going through the stats of all those guys. I think you understand it. I mean, maybe if you wanted to push back, you could talk about the games played argument for Jokic and Wemby, which I understand, but both of those guys are over 30 games played. Wemby's healthy right now. Jokic isn't. I'm guessing Jokic is probably going to be back for the All-Star game. He should be back any week now. And frankly, I mean, 30 is an arbitrary number, but that's kind of like the cutoff where I use, where if you were below that threshold, I really didn't consider you. And we're going to talk more about that when we talk about the cuts in the Western Conference. But I think the top five is all pretty self-explanatory. So let's move on to my first reserve. And this is where I have Anthony Edwards. And let me just say, if we're picking nits with the starting lineup, I think it is ridiculous that Stephen Curry was named a starter over Anthony Edwards. Some people said Ant should be in over Wemby because of the games played and stuff like that. I mean, I think Wemby, for his impact on both ends of the court, needs to be in there. But I think Ant is pretty clearly a better player than Steph at this point in time. I mean, Steph's my favorite player ever, but Ant is 30 points per game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, also averages a block and a steal. He gives you much more on the defensive end of the court than Steph does. He's actually shooting better from the field. He's also shooting better from three. I mean, Ant's shooting like 41% from three this year. It's ridiculous. I mean, Steph's just so wildly popular. I guess he's never going to lose the fan vote. But if it was up to me, Ant clearly deserves to be in the starting lineup over Steph. But either way, Steph would have been my first reserve in that scenario. But Anthony Edwards, unbelievable season. He's going to be a lock to make the team. Moving on to the next reserve spot here, I have Jamal Murray. Finally, we get to stop talking about how Jokic has never played with an all-star. I feel like that was really just kind of said disrespectfully. Like, it was technically true, but it was really just disrespectful toward Jamal Murray and how unbelievable he was during that 2023 finals run. I mean, I understand why he didn't make it. I'm not even saying he's been snubbed from the all-star team in previous years. Like, you'd have to go through it and look, and it's easy to say, like, oh, he definitely should have made it one of those years. But then you look at the Western Conference and especially the backcourt spots. I mean, it's been a dogfight every year, but finally, Jamal Murray is an absolute lock to make it. The fact that the Nuggets are like tied for the 2 seed, maybe they're technically in the 3 seed, but they're comfortably still a top 3 seed despite the fact that Jokic hasn't played in 3 weeks. That is a huge testament to Jamal Murray and also the ascension of Peyton Watson. That we'll save for another podcast. But on the season, Murray's 26 points per game, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, also averages a steal a game, and he's shooting 45% from 3. I mean, he's always been an unbelievable 3-point shooter. He's even had some years where he's above 40%, but 45 at the volume of attempts that he's taking is just ridiculous. And so I love Jamal Murray. Really happy to see him finally make an all-star team. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that's a lock. Next, we have 2 Rockets that I think are very deserving of making the team. Kevin Durant, who's averaging 26, 6, and 5, hovering around 50, 40, 90 like he's done for his entire career. I've been blown away watching Durant the last couple games. He's been awesome. Hasn't lost a step at all. The next Rocket, Alperen Şengün, he's recently coming back from injury here. He's 21 points per game, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. Also averages 1.5 steals and a block a game. I mean, I kind of go back and forth with who the best player on the Rockets has been this season. I feel like at the start of the year was probably Şengün. I feel like this recent stretch and a lot of those games without Şengün, Durant's clearly been the best guy. Gun to my head, I'd probably go Durant. I think he's just been that good for this Rockets team, even though overall they've been a little disappointing. But Şengün, just such a great playmaker. Don't know if he actually made the All-Star team last year, but he definitely deserves it if this is his first appearance. Moving on to another lock for this team, I'd say the top 5. Again, there's like a little tier break after that when we're talking about these reserves. I have Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns. The Suns need to have an all-star considering they're 27-19. They're currently in the 6th seed in the Western Conference, which basically nobody saw coming. So Book is very deserving for this spot. He's actually recently sprained his ankle. He should be back in time for the game, but he is averaging 25 points per game, 4 rebounds and 6 assists. And moving on, I have Kawhi Leonard. I think Kawhi's playing some of the best basketball of his entire career. Definitely on the offensive end. I mean, you really can't argue otherwise talking about the points per game and the shooting splits of what Kawhi has going on this year. He's 28 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. I believe he's also leading the league in steals per game at like 2.2. He's right up there with like Maxey and a couple other guys. He had that 55-point game not too long ago. It's been really a tale of 2 seasons when you look at the Clippers after they started 5-20 or something in that range. I mean, they've been a way better team as of late. And again, the West isn't quite as deep as what it's been in other years, so I do think that they will eventually make it into where they're comfortably in the play-in race. They're probably going to at least have a home game for the play-in. I just think the Clippers are too talented and injury pending. Knock on wood, like always for the Clippers. I think they're just too good of a team to be where they are in the standings currently. And a lot of people might push back on any Clipper being in the All-Star game just for how awful they started the year, but you kind of have to separate Kawhi from that. I just think he's been too good. And what a story it will be. I mean, the game's in LA. It's going to be at the Intuit Dome. Everybody's already forgot about the aspiration stuff. I just feel like it's really important that we have Kawhi Leonard on the scene. And then finally, my last reserve spot in the Western Conference, I have Chet Holmgren of the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's 18 points per game, 9 rebounds, 2 assists. He's also 2 blocks per game. And honestly, assuming that Wemby misses the 65-game minimum, which who knows if he's going to make it or not, he probably still has a chance to hit that threshold, even though he's already missed a good chunk of games. Assuming that Wemby misses that, I would say that right now Chet is my pick to win Defensive Player of the Year. It is pretty close with him and Gobert, who's always in the mix for that award, but I just feel like Chet anchoring the league's best defense, especially with Isaiah Hartenstein missing a huge chunk of time. All the analytics say he's like the best rim protector in the league. I think he's taken a real leap this year. And I know the scoring isn't super impressive, but it is a leap up from where he was in previous years. There's also so many games where the Thunder are blowing teams out. I just got to give Chet a nod for what he brings in the defensive end of the court. The three-point shooting, it's all great. And so I think Chet's very deserving. The fun part of this exercise, especially in the Western Conference, is looking at the first cuts and the people that did not make the All-Star team. And I think my first cut would have to go to Denny Advia. I'm not a huge Denny guy. I really don't enjoy watching him play. I just feel like if you think the foul baiting stuff is out of control with SGA, I still give him the benefit of the doubt because he's a player that has every possible move and has all these different ways he can score in isolation, where Denny just like charges into guys, and he's also 6'9" and super strong, and I just wonder why he has the whistle that he does. He's also second in the NBA in turnovers, and here I am just shitting on this guy that's also averaging like 26, 7, and 7 on a team that's been pretty good in the Portland Trailblazers, but I just couldn't quite get there for Denny. I don't think the Blazers are that good of a team, even though the record might show it. I think eventually they're going to get jumped by teams like the Clippers in the standing, so I don't feel like I need to shoehorn a guy into the All-Star team just because he has really good numbers on a pretty mediocre team. And when you include like the defense and the efficiency, all that stuff, I just like guys like Chet and Kawhi a lot more. Another guy that has a great argument is Harden. Like, Harden's stats are actually up quite a bit from last year. You know, the efficiency and the turnovers, I mean, he's right there with Denny. But I can't get there on giving 2 Clippers the nod. But statistically, looking at the profile, you have a good argument for James Harden. But I just think Kawhi's been a lot better, even though Harden's been more available. So that's why I went with Kawhi there. Another guy with a great argument is Julius Randle. He's 22 points a game. He's actually leading the Timberwolves in assists per game, which I was really surprised to find out in prepping for this podcast. But he's had a great season. He started really well. He's cooled off a little bit lately. And the Timberwolves just haven't really been good enough to warrant 2 All-Stars, so I left him on the bench for this one. Markkanen's another guy. I know the Jazz are toward the bottom of the standings. That's why I couldn't get there, but he's been unbelievable. I think he's like 26 points a game. Fox has sneaky been really good for a great San Antonio team that's second in the West right now, so he deserved a look. And a lot of people listening to this are probably asking, like, where's LeBron? Where's Austin Reeves? And the Lakers have a ton of fans out there. LeBron's averaging 22 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists. So that's quite a huge dip in his statistics compared to previous years. I know that he missed a lot of time at the start of the year because of the sciatica. I know he was on a minutes restriction. And I know if you look at the past couple weeks, it's like night and day to where LeBron is now to where he was at the start of the season. So if LeBron gets in as like a legacy award or just because people want him in the game that bad, I'm not going to throw a fit. But at the end of the day, the stats are down, and he only played in 27 games. I kind of use 30 as like my arbitrary cutoff for this award. He's missed a lot of time. I can't put him there over Chet. I think that Chet is just more valuable to the Thunder because of his availability, because of what he brings in the defensive end of the court. I think Kawhi has just been straight up better than LeBron this year. It's not particularly close. Same thing for like Booker and Şengün and all the guys above him on my reserve list here. So I couldn't quite get there with LeBron. Very similar logic with Austin Reeves, who's been balling out, but I believe Austin Reeves is even less games on the season with his recent injuries. Yeah, he's at 23 games played, even though he's at like 27 points per game on the season. So if LeBron and Austin Reeves had stayed healthy a bit longer, it definitely would have made this exercise a lot more complicated. Easily could have seen myself giving the nod to LeBron or Reeves over a guy like Chet had they played in more games, but since they didn't, I feel pretty comfortable with my reserve list being Anthony Edwards, Jamal Murray, Kevin Durant, Şengün, Booker, Kawhi, and Chet to accompany the starting lineup of Steph, Shea, Luka, Jokic, and Wemby. All right, after some technical difficulties, we're going to get into Celtics Corner here. So let's run through the recent stretch of Celtics basketball just to get you caught up to speed on all the games since my last podcast. We did take an L to the Pacers about a week and a half ago, 98-96, lost by 2. No Jaylen Brown in that game. I mean, we ended up with a horrible shot late, and it wasn't Derek White's fault, but it was just bad play design. We ended up with like a fall away three that never really had a shot at going in. And Indiana's just one of those teams where like you catch them on the right night. I've been saying it all year long. I know Halliburton's going to be out all year, but the rest of the guys that just came off making it to Game 7 of the NBA Finals, when most of those guys are there, they could beat anybody. They went into Oklahoma City. They beat them the other night. I know they've given the Knicks some hard times this year as well. They're just so much better than what their record indicates, and Siakam and Jay Huff, of all people, gave us a really tough one in that game, so that was a tough L, not going to lie. We did bounce back against Miami the next game. That was a game we started awful, and then Anthony Simons got blindingly hot. Super fun game. He finished with 39 points. We ended up winning that game by 5. We completely steamrolled the Hawks, ended up beating them by 30. Took an L to the Pistons. This was a tough one on national TV, lost by 1. Ended up getting a really great look for Jaylen Brown late in the game. Great play call. Got the ball to our best player. Strong side in the matchup that we wanted. The shot just didn't go in, so you can't hate that. Overall, we played really good defense on Cade Cunningham, but down the stretch, I think their role players outplayed ours. It was a really tough Derek White game, and I think Tobias Harris gave him like 25 points. So even if Cade's struggling, if they get that level of offensive production from Tobias Harris, Detroit is going to be next to impossible to beat. So it does suck that we were 1-3 on the year on Detroit, because that's a team we will more likely than not end up seeing in the postseason, but I'm looking forward to that matchup if we have Jason Tatum back. We did end up bouncing back against the Pacers the next game, avenged that loss. We ended up winning by 15, another 30 from Jaylen Brown. Sam Hauser stayed hot. And then maybe the most fun Celtics game of the year that we got on, what was that, Friday night, Saturday night? It all blends together because I've been snowed in here. But awesome double overtime win against the Brooklyn Nets of all teams. We ended up winning that one by 4, and again, double overtime. Incredible Peyton Pritchard game, 30-something points. I can't say the best basket that he's had because he had that crazy shot in the finals, but like he just got the ball going full speed. He split a double team, jumped and like finished around Claxton at the rim with his left hand. I've never seen him get up like that. It was sweet. He was locked in that entire game. And then Hugo Gonzalez was the one that actually hit the shot at the end of the first overtime to send us into double OT. And then in double OT, we were completely out of big men. Both Keita and Garza had fouled out in the game, so we were turned to Amari Williams for the full last 5 minutes of the game. He was actually awesome. He had an and one. He had a huge block. He had great energy. Obviously, he had fresh legs at that point. It was kind of like the Amari Williams breakout game, the Peyton Pritchard game. Hugo had a great moment. Even though it was the Nets, and I know the Nets have been awful. I mean, truly an awful team all year long. And even in like the surrounding games, I think they had lost by 60 points to the Knicks the game before, and then they got murdered by somebody else right after they took us to double overtime. But look, when the Nets have all their guys, it's still the NBA we're talking about. They have a ton of length, like between Drake Powell and Traore was awesome in that game, and Clowney and Claxton and MPJ. They just have like a lanky team. They were playing good defense, and their action was really tough to stop, especially with Michael Porter Jr., like I mentioned at the top of the pod, absolutely killing us in that game. I mean, you cannot contest that guy's shot no matter what, between his height, the elevation that he has in the shot. I mean, they can be a tough team. It's the NBA. So even though it was the Nets, I will happily take that double overtime win. That was a lot of fun. It is tough that the next game right after that, it was the second half of a road back-to-back. We had to go right to Chicago, played the Bulls, and ended up losing by 3. Kevin Huerter hit a game winner at the buzzer. I felt like down the stretch it got a little predictable with Jaylen Brown, and unfortunately I feel like we should have closed the game with Anthony Simons in there, at least on offense. I thought that was pretty puzzling because he had a pretty great game in that one. And we're currently about to tip off against the Portland Trailblazers, so I'm excited to tune in for that one after I'm done wrapping up. So after going through that recent stretch, I think we're 6-4 in our last 10 games. So not the best stretch, but we had a really nice run before that. What are my takeaways from this recent stretch of Celtics basketball? I would say Jaylen Brown's getting a little too hero ball-y, right? A little, not ISO heavy because he's still like such a great isolation scorer, but it just gets a little predictable, especially down the stretch in that Bulls game. It just feels a little one-dimensional, and it can definitely feel forced at times, and you have to take the good with the bad because like some of the circus shots he even made in that Bulls game were ridiculous, but maybe we're just in the dog days of the season and I'm being too critical, but I did want to call that out. It is really cool that we might have 3 centers now. That's my second takeaway here. I mean, we talked about Keita, the importance to what he was at the start of the season, to our rebounding, to our defense, and now you have Garza just shooting lights out from 3. Now all of a sudden we have Amari Williams entering the lineup as like another energy big. There's a nice contrast between all 3 of those guys. Obviously, we need to see more of a sample size with Amari Williams, but it's cool that, you know, Keita's more of that inside threat. Garza gives us a real stretch 5. It's just worth noting, again, this front court that I had nobody that I trusted heading into the season. Now that we have 3 guys that can at least play rotation minutes, whether they can hold up in the playoffs, we will see. We definitely have wing depth as well. I mean, it is fascinating to see Hauser, how well he's shot the ball lately. And then you have Walsh, Hugo, and Shireman off the bench giving us real minutes. Minot's been hurt, and he's basically fallen out of the rotation at this point, but it is really nice to have depth at that position. It is really fascinating, the Peyton Pritchard-Simons dynamic. There's a little stretch where like the rumblings of Simons maybe even being better than Pritchard. And then Pritchard had a nice little stretch recently too. So we will see. I still really like having Simons on the team, but I think the challenging thing is if we do get Jason Tatum back, does that push Pritchard to the bench? And then is Pritchard the one kind of in that spark plug role off the bench? You don't necessarily need two guys with that similar like offensive-minded skill set. If we have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White in the starting lineup, I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. You could easily start Pritchard in that situation too, but it is kind of fascinating to see Missoula pick between which one of those guys he's going to defer to, Pritchard or Simons, depending on who has it going in the game. I think both of those guys are talented to be at least looked at as a closing option, right? Like you're going to have to pick one of them because feasibly they can't be on the court together. But that's just a dynamic I'm monitoring. And I've already mentioned Tatum a few times. Part of the reason why is there was a new workout video that came out about a week ago. He was working out in front of trainers. He was working out in front of reporters. It felt very pointed that video was released, that Tatum was so comfortable working out in front of all those cameras when he's been working out behind closed doors all season. I think that all but calls it that he's going to be back at some point this season. I would expect he returns at some point in March so we can ramp him up at the end of the regular season and then get him some momentum heading into the playoffs. So nothing is in stone. It's still pretty unprecedented to return this quickly from Achilles injury, but if the guy's medically cleared, like I've been saying all year long, we know he wants to play. You can't rest him. You can't hold him out if he wants to play, and especially with how good the Celtics have been. Again, they're comfortably the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference right now. But we have rumors and rumblings from Zach Lowe, who reported on his podcast that the Celtics are going to be very aggressive heading into the deadline. So the last thing that I wanted to leave you guys with is what does that mean, for this team that is suddenly the 2 seed, the team that is stumbling upon all this depth. Brad Stevens just had a lights out offseason with getting production from guys like Garza and Gonzalez and Queta. All these fringe players are really working out in a big way. So what does that actually mean as far as team needs? I think at the end of the day, especially operating under the assumption that we bring Jason Tatum back, we definitely don't need wings. I feel pretty good about our guard rotation. It is still probably that front court spot that we need to upgrade, despite the fact, again, Queta, Garza, Amari Williams all playing pretty decent right now. So I'm not going to get too into the weeds in the trade stuff because I feel like we're headed toward a quiet deadline. The new CBA makes this next to impossible, and it's really hard to sketch out even what potential deals would look like because I'm still trying to understand this stuff. But I will give you guys some targets. I'll give you 3 high-end targets we could go after and then some more realistic names that I think we could end up with. Starting off with the high-end names, again, these are absolute long shots, but there were some real rumblings around Jaren Jackson being a potential target for the Celtics a couple of weeks ago. I feel like that's quieted down a bit, and Jackson's under a huge contract long-term, so that's a really big commitment after this season. And so I don't know if we're going to want to work around having like basically 3 max contracts because we know Tatum and Brown aren't going anywhere. So I wanted to throw that out there. Jared Allen, I think, is another name, more so when the Cavs were really struggling. Same thing with Zubac. I think those would be the last of like the high-end targets, but with the Cavs playing a little bit better lately, same thing with the Clippers. I mean, it's night and day from how they started the season. I don't think they're going to be motivated to trade their starting center. It's just not a very deep position. And on top of that, I feel like the Cavs and the Clippers are both locked in their minds as being contenders as well. So I don't really see that happening. And so then we move on to the more realistic targets. You have guys like Daniel Gafford from the Mavs. I mean, I think they should probably have a fire sale one way or the other, especially if they move on from Davis. I'd imagine Gafford's going to be available. He would be a nice pickup. A guy I really have liked for years is Day'Ron Sharpe. He's backing up Nick Claxton in Brooklyn right now. He's just a monster on the glass. I think he has some like stretch 5 potential as well. I really like Sharpe. I think he'd be a great target. I don't really know what the Pelicans are doing. I mean, that's why I'm trying to pick out these players of these teams in like the middle ground. And I mean, the Pelicans are kind of in no man's land. I mean, they don't have their own pick, but I feel like Yves Missi could be available. Derek Queen is probably the future of their center position. He's still pretty young and gives them a lot of defensive upside. So Missi could be a target. I know Jay Huff killed the Celtics a couple games ago. He gives you a nice stretch 5 option with some athleticism, some rim protection. Could be a nice little hybrid player to go after. And just because we're playing the Blazers tonight, maybe we bring back Rob Williams. I don't know. I mean, you can never count on Rob Williams actually playing in a game, but when he's out there, he always kind of breaks all the metrics in terms of efficiency. I haven't really studied him too much this year, but those are just some names to go after. I think the tricky thing is that the high-end names that I gave you, it's possible, but it's probably not going to happen. And then like the realistic names, it's hard to really point out like a guy like Gafford. Is he truly that much of an upgrade to Keita? I don't know. I mean, we've seen Gafford play in an NBA Finals. I don't know. That's just kind of the tricky thing is like you're not going to get some guy that combines the best qualities of Keita, his rebounding, his rim protection, and Garza, like the shooting. There's no hybrid player that can give you both that we would feasibly be able to get with this team. And if we did, the best trade chip that we have is definitely Anthony Simons. And do we trust our front court depth enough to value Simons where we would actually rather have that spark plug off the bench than another big man to add in the rotation that could give us something different? That's up for Brad Stevens to decide. He's definitely going to be making calls. He's definitely going to be feeling out offers. But despite the rumblings that the Celtics could be aggressive, I could also see us just rolling with the group that we have, bringing back Jason Tatum and thinking that might be enough to win the East. I don't really know. But that's where I'm at on this version of Celtics Corner. Let me know what you guys think. So that's going to do it for this podcast today. Definitely let me know what you guys think of my all-star picks, where you agree, where you disagree. We should get the full rosters released at some point this week. Not exactly sure when, but I know that news is coming within the next couple of days. The conversation's really just getting started, right? I mean, people got to get angry about snubs and, hey, this guy was snubbed from the all-star team, and people will tweet that, and they won't mention who they should actually replace from the actual lineup because it's a really hard exercise. I feel like there's 15 guys in every conference that you can make the argument for, especially when you compare it to all-stars in previous years. So it's fun. I feel really good about my choices in the West. The East, again, I'll probably flip-flop a lot, but you guys can let me know what you think. Let me know what you thought about this Celtics Corner as well. And on my next podcast, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do, right? We got about a little over a week from the deadline, so I'll probably bring you one more pod before the deadline. If any news breaks, if there's any stories that I want to touch on, if there's any teams that get hot, I'll probably talk about that on the next podcast. I might even bring Sean on, Sean Jones of the Sean Jones NBA Show, just to have him return the favor, maybe chop it up with him. And definitely the podcast after that, I'll be doing a trade deadline reaction. I'm excited to see if we do get any moves, what that's going to look like. The podcast after that, I'm probably thinking some tier rankings as well. So that's what you can expect. Before I let you guys go, be sure to follow @WordsWithWallace on everything. That includes Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to support the show as well. I've been saying it forever, but going to try to get out some clips this week, so be sure you're following on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, all those platforms as well. And I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.